Okay, so I think today we're going to be talking about the Apple case study, I guess, that was written by Ian Parker. And I just wanted to start by asking Heng Long and Tom and Belinda, did you like this article? And I know Heng Long has some strongly held views on it, so why don't you share what those views are?
Tom or Belinda, go ahead. I will follow up.
Okay, I can start then. Yeah, so I personally quite liked the article. It was a bit long. I think we looked at the paginated version and it's 36 pages, so it's quite long for like a single source. I enjoyed like the biography of Johnny Ive's life itself. It's a good story, but the thing that's surprising about it is that if you were looking at it as a source, it doesn't immediately strike you that it would be a great source on Apple's strategy. But actually, if you're considering it, from a framework of analyzing Apple's environment and the decisions that Apple as a company has made over decades, there's an enormous wealth of information within the article, kind of like buried beneath the story, which can be a little bit hard to access unless you're looking for it. But it's there, and it kind of goes to show how you can find a lot of like kind of unusually good amounts of information from sources that you wouldn't normally consider.
Yeah, I think that's right. But following on from that, it takes rereading. And I think that will be the theme. Depending on the way in which you approach it, you see very different things in it. As you say, an outline of Apple's strategy, an advertorial for product, a discussion of Johnny and his approach to life. So deliberate rereading helps you really draw out a framework.
Cool. Okay, so why don't we leap right in and just start as we did last week by trying to pull out what we can understand of Apple's goals as a company from reading this particular source, right? And when I say source, and when we say source, we mean this article. So when you're looking at different sources, like an article about a company in a newspaper or a magazine, you might also be looking at that same company, but from the lens of, for instance, an annual report or a survey done about that company's products by some third-party company. So this is just one source. And what we're going to do today is we're going to look at it in detail like we did with Azafami last week. That case study was a source as well. And we're going to try and pull out information about what goals Apple is trying to pursue, both superordinate and subordinate. And then we're going to try and think about the external situation and the internal situation that Apple is facing. So have at it, folks. Who wants to start?
I think Hen Long should start. He hasn't spoken yet.
Well, because I haven't talked about my comments on
I think we could.
Source. Well, this is a well illustration of why I don't really like the article. I think it's a bit difficult to get the super gold of Apple from this particular article. The only thing I can do personally is to interpret something from the links article. From my own perspective, the article emphasized a lot of how Apple decides their product. In particular, they highlight lots of disciplines or principles of their design, and they talk less about how to make money. I mean the profitability. So in this case, I would consider the super goal is to improve the quality of their product. Mm-hmm. That's my own opinion.
Okay.
How other people think.
So I had a thought about what Apple is trying to do based on the evidence that you see inside this source, right? So one thought is that you can say that Apple's superordinate goal is to make the best quality products possible. And it matters more for them to make the best quality product than just to maximize the profit that they get out of doing business. Mm. I don't know what you all thought of that idea.
I would agree. It's just the way I framed it, and I don't know whether this is, maybe I'm just imposing a constraint on the goal that's not needed. But I had to make the highest quality products possible, but also making those products available to the mass market. So they're bearing in mind a consumer who only has a certain amount of money to spend, and then they're trying to that consumer make the best possible product that they will be happy to spend a decent amount of their disposable income on.
Okay, I'm just going to start typing some ideas of what the superordinate goal might be in, but feel free to change them so that we are gradually converging on what we agree provisionally might be a superordinate goal from Apple, right? So, sorry, Belinda, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I just saying I agree on the accessibility. The point of tension for me is at maximizing quality over profit, or making sure that quality and familiarity are always consistent enough that it ensures profit. Research and development happens because of consumer participation in the process. The article talks a lot about the importance of delivery, getting a product out there, and it being an iterative design process.
Mm-hmm. So would we be saying actually that Apple's superordinate goal is not to maximize quality over maximizing profit, but to maximize quality within some parameters, and we can talk about what those are, in order to make a great profit?
Yes,
okay.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense to me.
Okay,
Design
so
process to ensure both fueled by, fed by accessibility and ensuring accessibility.
cool. Okay, so I've sort of modified that superordinate goal a little bit to say, what I think we're trying to get to. So what are some of these parameters that we're talking about? Tom, I think you mentioned some. Belinda, you mentioned some as well.
Yes. So the main one I was thinking about was, as Belinda said, accessibility. So I think one piece of evidence for this is that they said that like the entry level price point for the Apple Watch would be something like $350, and they're tagging it as like the high school or college graduation present.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like something that maybe many middle class families around the world can afford as a gift.
Yep. Great. Tom, I think you should put that into the evidence part of this worksheet.
I will do that right now.
And put in a page number as well. Are there other parameters? Well, you know what I want. Are there other parameters that Apple is maximizing quality within?
One thing came to my mind is the usefulness, because by designers, they always want to like design something beautiful, but it also mentioned they don't want to design beautiful but useless product.
Okay, so they're trying to make the highest quality, maximizing the design and hardware production quality of the products within parameters of pricing, accessibility, the target demographic, and utility and functionality, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Hong Long, do you want to put in some evidence of that in the evidence column as well?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. I'm going to just fix that typo. Are there subordinate goals for Apple?
Though I haven't finished the typing, I want to highlight one because I really love it.
Go ahead.
Is to create the it's from your, I think it's consistent with your book. The
Say more about my book. Anyway, go ahead.
Familiar.
Familiar. Okay. Yeah. Say more about that. What do you mean by that?
They want to create something which is consistent with their previous products, but something also innovative.
Right. So they need to, and I think Belinda, you brought this up earlier as well, right? This balancing of innovation with familiarity. How do we phrase that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and specifically they talk about the side design of the watch and its direct touch, feel, appearance relationship with previous products, and yet it's new, and that word newness appears again and again and again throughout the article. It's familiar but new.
Yep. Yes, yes, yes. Where do we see evidence for this?
On page 29, the quotation from,
Yeah.
although I hate to use the word quotation, but
Let's find out. Page 29.
Can't remember what this beats thing is. I'm still looking for it. I have the quote, but I don't have the page number.
And
Yes.
hopefully I have different page numbers. So.
Great.
It's at the very top. Okay. So I think let's actually put this in. Let me just move this across to this column because that's evidence. And I think what we're saying is the subordinate goal is to design and manufacture products. And again, everything I put in here is up for grabs, right? So we can like fix it, change it around, because that's the whole idea. We gradually massage what we say until it actually says what we mean to say. So we're trying to design and manufacture products which balance between being familiar and being new, which is to stay consistent with the look and feel of previous products from Apple, while actually also being, in a sense, new product categories, right?
Yeah.
Well, either brand new product categories or new instances of the existing product line. Like, for instance, like the new version of the iPhone should feel like an iPhone, but be distinctively different from the previous version of the iPhone.
Mm.
Okay, cool.
So that's an interesting point, Vaughan, because would you say that the sort of balancing the familiar and the new extends also to just the product lines, you know, going from iPhone X to iPhone 11, or is it more they're trying to, when they release a new product, it's intending to be category defining, whether it's creating the category itself or going into an existing one? Because to me, I feel like that the familiarity is far more important, you know, with releasing a new iPhone, and novelty is less important in this case.
I think it's a really good point. Familiarity is really, really important when you introduce a brand new category, right? Because what you want is the brand new category. If you've never seen an iPad before, by definition, the iPad is new. But it's important to make the iPad feel like an iPhone, which is already established, so that people who love the way iPhones look and feel will also want to buy the iPad. Whereas I guess if you're inside the new version of existing category, then what you want to do is you want to create something which feels new, even though it is much closer to previous versions of what it was, right? So, yeah. Okay, interesting. Any other goals that they have? I had some thoughts about it, but I'm curious what you all think.
Let me look back at my notes.
Yeah.
Actually, to be honest, those are the two that I had. I couldn't really find any strong evidence for like more granular subordinate goals.
Yeah.
But maybe that's in part due to the source itself. There's a lot of inference that you have to do.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing which we should say, which I think has already been mentioned, but we should just be very explicit about it, is that different sources require you to do different things to analyze them, right? So a source like the Azafami case, which was written for a business school case teaching context, will obviously look very different. It'll be presenting a lot of facts so that you don't have to like dig through them to interpret what these facts mean. The facts are right there. Whereas something like this Apple case study, if you will, has a particular position which it's trying to argue. And so you need to understand, if you're reading this case, what Ian Parker's position is, which he's making an argument about, and to be able to extract facts out of that you can use for a different argument. So the other subordinate goal that I was thinking about, and it's up for discussion as well, is it seems to me, based on what they say in this source, that Apple is also trying to design and manufacture products which fit into existing, I guess, consumer ways of doing things, right? They don't want to force, I think the quote is, doesn't want to force adjustment of behavior. And if you think about the way, Apple has been very successful with its products, it really has been very successful by getting people to do what they normally do, except perhaps in a slightly different way. For instance, when the first iPhone was released, it wasn't that people never listened to music on a device. It also wasn't that they never used cell phones. The novelty was really combining all of those things in one device, right? So they weren't asking people to do something radically different. What they were asking people to do was to do things that were normally done separately on the same object. So if you look at sort of the history of what Apple has produced since then, it all kind of fits into this idea that they're trying to make products which don't force adjustment of consumer behavior. I don't know what you all think about this.
I'm not sure if it's forcing adjustment in consumer behavior, but it's recognizing, I'll take a step back and say it's really interesting, the combination between human interface and the industrial design process. That to me says everything that we need to know about this. They want the interaction process to be as seamless as the delivery process. And you can see that in the way that they're talking about the production of the watch and the usefulness. It's unobtrusive. It delivers, it's beautiful, but it doesn't get in the way of basic human interaction.
Yeah. How would we rephrase this goal to like reflect? Because I agree with that. How would we rephrase it so that it reflects what you just said, Belinda?
It's about understanding and in many ways preempting human behavior and human response to consumer products. And that's where the design process comes in and is particularly unique with Apple, I think. The example of looking at the process that Google was going through and potentially designing glasses for us to wear. And again, this is a matter of interpretation. Is it fact? Is it advertorial, editorial? But of course, Apple knew it was meant to be a watch.
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
Okay. Well, so go back in and just change the text, right? So right now it says design and manufacture products which fit into existing consumer ways of doing things. I think what you said makes much more sense. So change it to make it make much more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just to build off that point as well, I think there's a great passage in the last section. I'm going to try and find a quote from it where they're talking about the Apple Watch is, as Belinda said, is supposed to be unobtrusive and only like, you're only supposed to be alerted to the fact that it's an electronic device when you're ready to use it, as you raise it to your eye line, and when it's on your wrist, it should just be kind of black. And I think in order to do that, Apple almost have a theory of mind of the consumer, and they really are thinking as much about how the consumer, behaves. What sort of activities are you trying to facilitate the people using the Apple products doing, and how can the Apple products facilitate those activities as easily, make those things as easy as possible, as opposed to how can the Apple product be as, maybe I'm not being fully articulate here, but maybe that's part of their definition of quality at the top, is making something that makes it easier or more seamless for people to want to do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah. Okay.
And that seems to be very important. So that's defining whether they're going into, whether it's a watch or or an iPhone, so that they have a mental model of all the things that this thing will make the consumer better at doing or more seamless at achieving.
Where do you find this evidence in this source? Because I mean,
So
I'm looking at products that Apple has made, but I don't remember reading it in the article.
There's a passage about so I think it's in section 4, a tap on the wrist. Let me find the specific part.
I think, so while Tom is looking for that, this is also a good time to point out that when you are looking at a specific source, you should make sure that you're only looking at that source, right? So especially for some company like Apple, where a lot of us are very familiar with its products, it's often tempting to just sort of assume that you read something in a source when it's actually information that you got from somewhere else. And this is one of the ways that you end up not citing correctly, because you are assuming that you saw something in a source that you didn't actually see. So whenever you make a statement like we're doing right now about what Apple's goals are, for instance, always force yourself to go find the evidence for your argument inside the source itself. And if you can't find it, don't make the statement.
Yeah, so there's a passage on page 25, which, so they say, I mean, I'll let you guys judge whether this just supports what I just said earlier, but it's comparing Google Glass to the Apple Watch, and they're saying, I always thought that glasses were not a smart move because people wouldn't want to wear them, and they would be intrusive instead of, if I get a notification here, it will tap my wrist and I can casually look and it doesn't get in the way of the human interaction, which is what the products are trying to facilitate.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that goes exactly to what Belinda was saying about products serve instead of obstruct human interaction or use, right?
About sitting across the table and the watch not getting in the way of their interaction at that time in extension.
I see. Okay. Where is the evidence for that, Belinda? Because I remember reading that.
Yes, I'm trying to find it as well.
Let's see.
There we go. So my pages are slightly different because I created pages before. But he looks at the watch on his wrist. This isn't obnoxious. This isn't building a barrier between you and me.
Got it.
Yeah.
You just find it
It's in the Google Glass conversation.
It's also page 25. It's actually from the same paragraph
Got it.
that I was citing as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Or 17 in mine. Hopefully.
Okay, cool. I think we are we good with the superordinate and subordinate goals at the moment?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So
I have another idea about the subordinate, which is to continuously produce new products.
Okay, let's add a line. Go ahead, just talk it up.
Right. They use the word newness all the time. It's repeated throughout the article.
Cool. So newness all the time. Where are some places where it's repeated throughout the article?
There's one of the section headers even has new in the title. Let me see if I can find what it exactly says.
The article contradicts itself on this point as well, because they do make the point that it's not very often we start something that's an entirely new platform. So new product, but not new platform.
Yeah.
Necessarily.
Yeah, so there's a heading called Managing Newness. Let me put that in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess when they say a new platform, they're not talking about a new product category all the time, but what they're interested in doing is constantly producing something new, whether it's a new product category or if it's a new version of an existing category.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that feeds into what we'll probably talk a lot more about, but it's the consumer role in co-iteration of products.
Yeah.
Partly by literally funding the process.
Yeah. Cool.
But also responding to certain.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Very good. Okay. So So one of the reasons, by the way, I am kind of forging ahead very quickly is because due to the way this Zoom recording setup is going, I cannot see any of you when you're talking. So feel free to interrupt me when I'm saying something and just like say something. I can't see any of these visual cues, right?
Mm.
All right, so should we move ahead to the external situation?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd say so.
Okay, in that case, let us do that. Who wants to begin?
Belinda, you should begin.
Thank you. So this is one of the things that I pulled out, and I have to give the context, which I explained to you all before about my reading of this. As I said, I've been reading this article over many years for various reasons. One is genuine interest. It's also having worked with a number of people who are mentioned in the article. So this is relevant for 2 points. One is making sure that I'm only taking evidence from the article itself, but also having a wider understanding of the external context and potentially the gossip which sits alongside analysing this. But the external situation, one thing that comes out in this article quite clearly for me is that they just see themselves as purer than other organisations in terms of product design and delivery. And that inherent market competition, I think, is very interesting. And it's almost, depending on the way in which you read it, the Google Glass reference is very, very useful. It can be quite critical of Google, or it can be quite a neutral market analysis. So you're looking at an environment in which they're explicitly discussing the fact that other organizations simply don't seem to co-design interface plus product in the same way. That wasn't very articulate, but hopefully that made some sense.
How would we frame, so is that an opportunity or a constraint?
I think it's an opportunity for for Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So how do we phrase that?
The way I would put it, and I think this is also cited directly in the article, is most or many organizations that are designing consumer products are less careful than Apple. I think there's a direct quote from Johnny Ive about the carelessness of most designs. And then the Google Glass is one example of this. They're not actually thinking about how people will be using it, is what they're saying. So yeah, there's a gap in the market for carefulness, I guess is one way you can say it.
So could we phrase it as the industry in which they operate doesn't care about making products that are sensitive to the kind of human interaction that Apple cares about? We'll have to fix this, obviously, but I'm just trying to get the ideas out there because you guys aren't typing shit in, right? So I'm trying to type it in. So is that what we think? How can we be more precise about the kind of human interaction that Apple cares about? Belinda, I think you were very articulate about that.
Well, I mean, one particular example that's in this specific document talks about whether or not Johnny should have been focusing on a tablet or a phone.
Yeah.
Quite simply. And they decided it was just the wrong approach to look at tablets now because it disregarded what their consumers had been telling them about what they wanted.
Yes. Let's see. So this would be, let me see. This is when they're talking about the Macintosh Folio, right? No, that's not it.
That's correct.
Is that it? No, I don't think so.
It's in the same section.
Yeah.
I need to find the...
Yes, I think it's in the same section, but it's in our new paginated version. It's on page 20. So Ive told me that he initially pressed for a tablet, then agreed with Jobs that a phone should come first. A tablet would have presented consumers with a new category of machine and a new way of communicating with machine all at once.
Mm.
That makes sense.
And the
So-
That's
Google
also
Glass,
an interesting fact.
So I guess,
and then Google Glass, for example, sits against that quite
yeah.
awkwardly. It shows how out of context that decision to pursue that project was
Yes.
with the existing consumer base.
Okay. I still think the phrasing of this opportunity is clunky and doesn't actually get to what we are talking about yet.
Mm.
So we should try
Yeah.
and fix that.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, one thing that's a challenge with this, and again, it testifies to the source itself, is because it's like a personal interview, and Ivor's a public figure of repute. He doesn't want to give a lot of examples. I think it comes up 3 times where the reporter presses him for examples, and he really doesn't want to give any because he doesn't want to be slating his competitors in public.
Mhm.
So, I mean, the best we can do is his comment on the Toyota Echo as a poorly designed car, but obviously Apple don't make cars.
Right. Yet.
But again, that was
Yeah,
part of-
yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
So-
maybe it's not about the environment in which Apple's operating doesn't care about. They simply haven't integrated user-centered design.
To the same
I
extent,
do
because
think
everyone
think they
says
care.
that they care about it, right?
Yeah,
So
I
it
don't
would be
think they
very
care.
hard to find a company that says we don't care about user-centered design. So what are we actually
Yeah.
saying about Apple? Is that they're better at user-centered design? That they care more about it? They invest more in it?
They know how to do it. They're better at it, and they see it as integral to the product development process.
Yeah. So
Quote sorry, John.
one good example here, just to support Belinda's point, is I think there's an example of how when they were designing the iPhone, they settled on the perfect height of the iPhone based on carrying it in their pocket for days. And it's just like the fastidiousness of the testing that all the designers go through, put their products through, and in order to make sure that it's going to serve the purpose of the consumer. Like you can't imagine many other companies going to those lengths.
Yeah.
Yes.
Put that in the evidence column.
Yeah, well, I'm just gotta find which page it's on.
Yeah. The search function in PDFs turns out to be quite useful.
I have been doing that, but I don't know if mine's not pockets. Here we go.
There's the specific quote about the long horizontal stripe where design is part of every conversation.
Long horizontal stripe. So is it accurate then to say, or is it more precise to say that the consumer electronics industry does not have as much ability or willingness as Apple to invest in user-centered design?
Yeah, I think they understood it and understand it differently. It's as simple and as complex as that. Design has always been part of it, but Apple made it part of it. I think that sums up my case nicely.
Okay. Are there? Okay, so we should try and like kind of fill out the rest of this because time moves along. Are there external constraints that they face that are worth talking about?
External.
Excellent.
I think I have some. The biggest one that I found is just they're very constrained by the low labor supply of world-class designers. So they have 3 recruiters who find on average 1 candidate per year who's, of good enough caliber to join their design team.
Okay.
So let me put that in.
Yeah. and I think I can even find, let's see.
Sorry. And there's also an open question here about whether they need that many designers, but I'm kind of assuming that if they had more, it would be better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the evidence for that is on page 6.
And you're right. That again is a pretty inherent tension in the article: control versus dispersed design.
Yes. Now, I think the question is, now we're looking at just the external situation, right?
Yeah.
So I think one thing that we should mention now is that some sources of evidence give you more evidence about one part of the case than a different kind might be, right? So last week with the Azafami case, because it was a case study written for business school case method teaching, it would tell you about the external situation, the internal situation. It would give you across the entire range of data. But in this case, really, this case study by Ian Parker is mostly about what's going on inside Apple. So I think when we move to the internal situation, there'll just be even more to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else? In terms of the external environment situation?
I have one thought about the external opportunities, which is the lack of cynic criticism and skeptic criticism.
Okay. I'm just going to reformat this because every time you paste something in, it changes the line spacing. And it kind of slightly, because I am just weird like that, makes me really anxious.
Upset.
Okay, next time I will do it.
Yes.
Type it.
Correct. Okay, cool. So this is an external opportunity, you think? A conspicuous lack of cynicism and skepticism by Apple. Why is it an external situation opportunity?
It was mentioned this kind of innovation or design probably less likely to happen in the UK. I think that's what the article implies.
So America is the place where, okay, got it. I did not remember this part of the article. So America, which is where Apple is based, has a conspicuous lack of cynicism and skepticism compared to Europe.
This I think is another really good example of how the external and the internal are so intertwined in the way in which this article is presented and written.
Yes.
Because this quote speaks directly to Johnny and his ability to be as creative and effective and have as great an impact as possible, because according to the article, he felt liberated in America as opposed to constrained in, So it's a personal, professional.
So how do we represent this in text? So I'm going to just write this in there because I think we may end up deciding to move this somewhere else.
Yeah.
This is on page 17.
I mean, at one level, just naively, you could say the American audience or the American market to whom Apple tailor their initial new products are far more receptive of innovation than Europe. And I think then there's an open question on whether that's justified by the text. I don't know if it is.
To Belinda's point, what the text appears to be saying when I read it, which is on page 17 in the paginated version, is that there is something about this country, about America, that gave Johnny Ive himself the ability to be much more creative than he could have been in the UK, right? And so I don't think the article is saying, I think, or at least not from this particular chunk of it on page 17, it doesn't seem to be saying that America in general enables creativity and innovation for everyone, and also makes the country as a whole, in terms of its consumption, more amenable to innovation. It is talking about Johnny Ive going to America and being kind of freed and liberated to make new things. So
specifically about the role of sunshine.
Yes, in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So it is important because one of the key arguments that is very much buried inside this article is that Apple's success is because of Johnny Ive, right?
Yes.
So if we believe that, then this is a really important aspect of the external situation that creates an opportunity for Johnny Ive and therefore for Apple. If we don't believe that fundamental assumption, Johnny is the reason why Apple has been successful, then maybe we are less convinced by this. What do we think? Belinda, you know these people, you know the principles. What's your thought?
That's the overall problem, and with the article, and also why I like it so much, because it's almost impossible to separate the fact from the potential fiction. So it takes a lot of analysis as you work through to separate the role of the man, the perceived role of the man.
Yeah.
So yes, I've moved to San Francisco and I've had sunshine and now I'm liberated. Well, also media scrutiny completely changed from he's the leader of failure to actually he's got some great ideas. But is that actually about Johnny, or is that about Steve Jobs? So I know I'm asking lots of questions, but that's the journey that the article takes. So, and that's why I think this one in particular, it's very difficult to talk about in a good way. It's difficult to talk about external and internal and to separate them specifically. There is an external context, of course, the company's operating, but is that what the article is about?
Okay. Well, why don't we, in that case, temporarily pause our look at the external situation and go look at the internal situation, which in this article is much more, like there's so much more about what Apple is doing inside, what its constraints and opportunities are. We should just go there and then we'll come back maybe later and see whether that changes our minds about what the external situation looks like. So internal situation, thoughts?
Sure. So, I mean, I can start. I think one thing that's mentioned a couple of times is that they have quote unquote virtually limitless resources. So they just have loads of money to throw at making, making new things and trying to make new things that people like and are high quality, that speak to the goals that we identified at the top. And then kind of, I'd say dovetailing with that, but probably also worthy of its own opportunity bucket, is they have access to, there's a couple of examples of them having access to cutting edge technology. Specifically, I'm talking about physical technology here. So like touch screens, so a few years before everyone else. And then I think there's a couple of examples later on in the article when they're talking about the Apple Watch, how there's the sapphire glass on the front of it. It was the first time that was made in a mass market product. And it's actually, I don't know how much you know about these things, but that's a tremendous innovation to not have a watch face that breaks when you drop it, but also doesn't cost thousands of dollars.
Cool.
So yeah, I'd say limitless resources, both from a financial and a manpower sense, and also in the concrete, in the like sort of cutting edge technology.
I'm just
sense.
trying to put in some of the evidence now.
Yeah, now I'm going to have to go and find it all.
Multi-touch. So that's on page 2. I got the multi-touch one.
Okay, you put, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll leave it then. Let's just search resources.
Yeah.
Inexhaustible marketing resources, page 3.
Yes.
Inexhaustible.
Inexhaustible marketing resources.
You know, it's such interesting language. What does that actually mean? Inexhaustible.
Yeah.
There is at some point.
It's true.
Yeah.
It must at some point potentially run out. The question is,
Exhaust.
yeah. Okay. So the constraints.
And I know I sound flippant, but it's an important point, I think. So these are really grand statements
Totally.
that are out, which is the cornerstone of Parker's storytelling and argument. And I say storytelling specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also then you know, once you open that conversation, it leads naturally to why do they have inexhaustible marketing resources, and then you're talking about the fact that people are willing to fork out loads for Apple products, and so it's sort of inseparably bound up with Apple's strategy.
Absolutely, and then the internal, I guess, parallel of that, the quote being, I think, you can't get people this smart to work just for money.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the idea that people are always giving to this cause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, it's a funny source.
Sorry.
We're gonna go. Let me just say this really short thing. I was just going to say it's a funny source to analyze, because if you don't stop yourself, you analyze it in a textual or literary sense, not in a like a business or a strategic sense. And so I'm always having to stop myself from like doing that. So we have to like focus on the concrete.
Yeah, I mean, and I very deliberately, when we spoke earlier, talked about it being represented almost as a Shakespearean strategy, and this sense of martyrdom, especially for Johnny. I mean, the number of times it mentions how exhausted he is. Yeah,
he must be exhausted. He is the person on whom the fortunes of an entire company rest.
Absolutely. That comes back to this idea of limitless. Well, there is a limit. There's a limit to all of the resources that they have. And if we're talking about one man being the primary resource, then this is kind of a problem.
Yes. So maybe one of the constraints also is this idea. Yeah. Because it is true that for Apple, you know, like the cult of the creative genius, I think Apple, among all of the technology companies that are big names at the moment, they are probably the ones that have either capitalized on it the most or been responsible for emphasizing it the most. Like with Steve Jobs and with Johnny Ive, it was definitely a cult of personality, as here is the genius who is able to create all these new things, right? So maybe this is a constraint.
The burdened genius. And again,
let's just put a little like placeholder there.
The burdened genius, yes. It's going to be the name of my band.
My band is called Hard Truths.
Hard Truths.
And I guess the reason why this is a constraint
collective bad band names.
Did you? Well, that makes two of them.
Really?
Yeah. And okay, so
Soviet yeast, platonic spoon. Sorry.
Platonic spoon is pretty good. So the internal situation, this is a constraint because why is the burden creative genius from which innovation originates? Why is that a constraint on the organization? Or why might it be a constraint on the organization?
Well, the assumption is if your creative genius was unburdened, you might get more innovation, which would be, you know, which speaks to Apple's goals. And I guess the idea would be the organization will be able to achieve their goals better if you had more people or one person who is able to do more innovation of the quality that we have come to expect from Apple. Yeah, a rate limiter, exactly. It's a bottleneck.
Okay, good.
I think it speaks to a wider lack of confidence in an organization that so much pressure is put on one.
Yeah.
And two people, of course.
Yeah.
And again, the article is both incredibly clear and unclear about the degree to which that is external scrutiny and sort of a particular style of reporting versus what it actually is internally. And the internal commentary is also inconsistent. It's a collaborative team. Everybody has a voice. We don't say any one person designs a product, it's the team. But then very specific references to control.
Okay. How do we articulate that compactly?
Yes,
I think,
that is.
I mean,
I don't know.
Cult of personality. That it is, which as a phrase unto itself sort of it indicates both hollow and over exaggerated, potentially.
Yeah.
He is deeply, deeply tired.
And always anxious.
And always anxious, not the one.
He got pneumonia, and that's mentioned as a side point since I last saw him. Stricken with shingles.
So okay, we can come back to each of these and kind of like add on to them. I just want to make sure that we're covering the span, and then we can go back in and go deeper on things if we need to. I think one important opportunity that we should make sure we mention is that, and this is definitely from inside this article, it's data that's inside, it's that Apple appears to do its design and production design 100% in-house from end to end. So this everything from conceptual design through to the design of the engineering process. And I think there's something interesting in this here, which is that the designers in the Apple context are very close to the design engineering and the production engineering, so that they actually know how production, they are able to design to the very limit a producible product, right? So I think this is a really, really interesting thing, which you definitely do not see happening at other consumer electronics companies, because that connection between the design part and the production engineering part is significantly less close. So one example of evidence for this is the fact that the actual tooling machines that are used in production scale manufacturing for Apple are physically located inside the design studio and are used in order to do the initial prototyping and design, right? So I just want to say again, the importance of understanding the full affordances of your production capability allows you to push production all the way to the limit. And that's how you can have these amazing tolerances on Apple products, right? Like they make things that would otherwise be impossible to make. And there's a term in German which I love to use, Fingerspitzengefühl. You know, when you understand the material and things that you have in such detail that you can make things that people who don't have that understanding find impossible, like they're magic. That's incredible. And that's one of the things that I'm an Apple fanboy from a hardware perspective, not any other perspective. And this explains, in part, why this is possible, right? They're also willing to invest a lot of money in the design process. But I think part of their ability to do these amazing things is that they've designed their design process differently as well.
Yeah, totally agree. And one more, actually no, this is related, but it's So this is just yet again another example of thinking that a point is related, but it's just bound up in the narrative of the article and it is related to a separate point. But I was going to talk about how when you look at the motherboard or the integrated circuit on an Apple computer, designed beautifully, even though no person sees it, but that actually it's related to their design philosophy, but it's not necessarily related to this point. So just flagging that if any students are watching this, it's a mistake that I was about to make out loud.
But you avoided it. Well, but say more about it. Should that go somewhere else, Tom?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I think that's more evidence for their goals or their philosophy. I wouldn't necessarily put it as an opportunity. You could maybe even put it as an internal constraint. It's a trade-off that they're making, and one of the trade-offs is you put a lot of effort into producing a beautiful thing, and that effort is maybe not always seen by the end consumer.
Mm-hmm.
So you could maybe frame it as an internal constraint, as in Apple's, let's say, rigorous design philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't necessarily say it wastes resources, is not the right phrasing, but it definitely, it's unclear how, like, it's maybe not efficient is the word you might use.
Okay.
I don't know, but I don't know how to phrase it eloquently as a constraint. Is maybe favors
The article then goes on to talk
beauty.
about how that approach changed. Today, Apple's design is like their competitors make machines that are almost disposable. The screens cracked, the processors outmoded, etc. So I think that actually backs up what you're saying, that perhaps the perception of efficiency, or another word,
Uh-oh. There you go. Efficiency.
So we have.
Yeah. So I've said that. Oh, go ahead. Hang on.
No. You go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying Apple's design philosophy favors beauty over efficiency, but is inherently more costly as a result, or yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hang on, what were you going to say?
Though we have already included people into the resource, I don't know whether we should highlight Johnny Ive himself is a big competitive advantage.
Yeah. If we agree that he is actually, like, if we agree with this cult of personality situation, then he would be a resource, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Belinda, how do you feel about this, given that you know the principles involved?
What in particular?
Is Johnny Ive an internal resource opportunity, I guess, or is he a constraint?
He's both.
He's both.
And it's
Indeed.
not ignoring the fact that I may know him, have met him. That's a much better way of putting that. That's exactly what this piece describes.
Yeah.
In the spirit of argumentation, would you say he's more of a constraint or an opportunity?
I think he increasingly becomes a constraint in the course of this article.
Okay. Interesting.
I think the sense of expectation outweighs his potential to deliver.
Okay.
Also, he's very tired.
Very tired.
Yeah.
Deeply, deeply tired.
I mean, it is interesting. You see through this article him pushing his personal agenda more and more, the luxury side of things, etc. It really is a shift potentially in strategy. You see him trying to make more of a personal impact on the way in which they approach and access different markets. Him bringing his, quite frankly, his friends on board to the board.
That's an interesting point because the reason why I mentioned this point, I mean, one of the concrete example is for other watch companies, they have like multiple colors, multiple size for the customers to pick. But the article mentioned Johnny Ive has the best taste, so they can have just one size and one color, which is, I guess, one unique feature of Apple products.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's an interesting thing as well, because it's not like there's the classic example of like mass production is the Model T, where like every consumer can have a Model T as long as they want it in black, because that's the only color they're going to make. But with Apple, they could clearly make more colors, and so it's actually a design decision that they haven't, and it is kind of an implicit. It reflects a belief that they have, which is our designers have better taste than the people who are buying our products, who might want their, iPhone to be a different color.
Yes. It makes me worry for that designer who's mentioned in there, who's the only one with a specific remit, which is color.
Oh, yeah.
So I think what we're converging on is this idea that you can have a design genius on staff, and they can be both an asset, because they help you create, because of their interests, a new product category that can become very successful, like the Apple Watch. And also they can kind of limit, right? Like they can insist on only doing things in one color or in one size. But by the way, where is the evidence for that? Up here?
Let me just check.
And just to clarify, I know it's not mentioned in the article, but Johnny Ive himself has now stepped down from Apple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when did that happen? It was after the article was, like a couple of years after the article was published, I think.
2019, and he was due to launch his own creative firm the beginning of 2020. And he's done
Right.
what all successful senior execs do, and his first client is Apple.
Nice.
Well, there you
Nailed
go.
it.
Yeah, that's a very
That's
good
goals.
Which actually speaks to everything that we're talking about, because they're still dependent.
Yes,
Mm.
but it comes from outside of this article.
It does. It does.
Does.
It's just an interesting
Yeah.
aside.
Yeah. For our purpose, it does not exist.
It's on the page of 27.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, hold on. What is on page 27, Hong Long?
It mentioned like other brands will have multiple colors for.
Yeah. Okay. That is a constraint, right? Because it's now in two places.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So I'm just going to put it up there. No worries. I got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Guys, I need to step aside for just a minute. So if you want to talk about me behind my back, just now's the time. Go ahead.
Okay. Given that we are now well over an hour, I think, should we move on to the goals page? How about that? Yeah, okay, let me just move all this stuff down and have a think while I do it. happened there? So annoying. All right, I'll fix that later. And okay. All right, so there we have it. Okay, very good. So feel free to start while I just clean up the formatting because I have weird OCD about that.
Mm.
Don't feel compelled to wait, folks. Leap right in.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about where to begin, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, one strategy that applies to all of these goals is just that they have a highly intimate and empowered, like a well-resourced design team.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
Empowered and well. Don't worry, Vaughan, I'll add the Oxford comma. There you go.
Excellent.
And I'll nailed it.
Nailed it. So let's see.
Fit into. Yeah, I'm just going to put that for all of them because I honestly think that is.
I think it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Continual production of new products. Yeah, I mean, it even applies to this, doesn't it?
Yeah. So
It kind of reinforces the case we're making overall that all of the actions tend to deliver against all of the goals.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
where
But it
is
almost makes you wonder whether there's a better way of phrasing, because right now we have 4 goals. Like maybe there's a way to integrate them harmoniously.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
where is the evidence? So there is tons of evidence inside that this team is really tightly knit. They work really, really closely with each other. Let's put some page numbers in there.
Okay.
Yeah. Find some. What evidence are you looking for specifically, Vaughan?
So this thing about a highly intimate, highly empowered, and well-resourced design team.
Yeah.
The evidence for that comes from across the article, right? So the intimacy, there are sections about that. The empowerment inside the organization, there are sections about that. And their well-resourcedness, there are sections about that too. So where are they? So I would say that the well-resourced part.
Page A.
Yeah.
Sorry, page 10. That should be.
Okay. Well, just go ahead and put it right in.
Okay.
Like being in church when the priest walks in, page 3.
Yeah, I love that.
Great.
So page 3, they are empowered.
Okay, fantastic. So what else do they have? They also have maximizing design and hardware production quality. So they also do this by integrating design with production engineering. And that's page D1.
And then I don't know if maybe this goes with the first point, but the designers have enormous latitude, not just over the physical products, but also increasingly over the software itself.
Yeah.
So I think they were saying Johnny Ive moved to work on iOS 7 and was, he has lots of opinions about the corners on the app boxes.
Where
and,
is?
Let me find that.
So I've now added that to the second line under the first goal.
Okay, that's page 12 is the
Cool.
element to that.
Great. Now that's in. Perfect.
My comment feeds into the design team.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Maybe let's just say with latitude across.
Another strategy they apply, but I don't know which specific goal to put. Is they try to build an image, a good image to the overseas factory workers, to saying that they are not only making money.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it.
I think that's a important point to, like, they not only focus on, because this article talks not of the in-house design, but the overseas workers are also important. I think they try to highlight that.
Yes. So how would you articulate that action concisely?
Taking care of downstream employees.
Okay. Say more.
So that I think that's what I lack, because I don't know where to put this.
Well, no, but just say more about what you mean, and then we can find a place to put it.
Okay. Well, in terms of the page, I can talk at first. Is on page 35.
Okay.
So it was mentioned, it's determined to make the case, as Code put it, the company's leaders shouldn't be shown to be a greedy baskets looking for.
I think what we're pointing to here is this idea that in order to make things at this very high level of quality, which is stretching across all of these goals, you need to make sure that you've got the right people, right? So you've got to kind of make the work environment as good for not just the overseas employees, it's really for everyone at Apple. It has to feel like the best place to work. Is that right?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. So, Belinda, what's this section for after years of collaboration? That's the intimate part, right?
Yeah, that's a reference to the design team. Sorry.
Great. So let me just put that in there.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, that's an interesting point about care of the displays, because they also make direct reference to sometimes undue pressure put on external contractors, and that direct quote: "You don't play politely, but you play as a team. You play hard, and people are going to get hurt."
Yeah.
So where should we put that? Should we put it as something that stretches across all of the different goals?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's got everything. All of the goals have to do with design, don't they? So I think this has to do with all of them as well.
Okay. So how do we phrase that? Hold on, do you want to give it a stab?
Carefully building the image of the company so that everyone associated with Apple wants to work for it.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So just like type it in and we'll paste it down.
Yeah.
Design process. I'd like to find another strategic action to address the goal of pursuing the strangely familiar, to use the quote from the article. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to like. Unfortunately, like a highly intimate, empowered, and well-resourced design team, there's like 50 different pieces of evidence to support this claim, and some of them kind of leak into supporting the goals themselves. But I can't really come up with another separate concrete action that they're taking to support or pursue goals 2 and 3.
So balancing between familiarity and novelty, their design process. I mean, Tom, you were the one who brought up this idea that in order for them to validate a particular hardware design, they will often bring it through a really long, kind of weird, intense process of evaluation, right? Like, I think the difference between the sizes of the phone mock-up that they were carrying around were like fractions of an inch. So where do we find that?
Yeah, I tried looking for that earlier and I couldn't find it. I'll look again. Oh, actually, no, I do know. It's 4.7.
Yeah, and I think this actually goes to goal number 3 as well.
3.
Where is it?
If you're talking about the phone example, that's in section 3, but that's when Johnny was starting out rather than speaking to their design team.
Yes.
This page there's a so when the bit where they're testing the phone based on its length in their pocket is page 21, I believe.
Yeah.
It is a long article.
Yeah.
Cool.
This is page 21.
Is it on page 21? I don't find it on page 21. Yeah, actually.
Let me research for it then.
Yes. And Belinda, I actually just saw the quote, and I agree with you. It makes a lot of sense. Design at Apple is a long horizontal stripe where design is part of every conversation.
Yes.
That makes sense. That is on page 21.
So that's the thing I'm confusing it with. There's for some reason my search function in the PDF isn't working particularly well. Can someone search 4.7 and tell me what page that's on?
4.7. I will do that right now.
Now it's working again. So it's page 28.
Page 28.
Yeah.
Perfect. Cool. Done. Okay. Any other actions that they're taking to?
An action related to the 4th goal is they try to apply their what I will call accumulated knowledge to produce new products. Like the Apple Watch, as they said, they had this idea like decades ago, and they always had this kind of waiting list to, if they want new product, they can collect something from the waiting list and then to produce it.
Ah, I see. Okay. Where do you find that? That's great.
Let me see.
So what do we call that? We call that a pipeline. Oh shit. Let me just put that back.
There's some place mentioning, yeah, that's on 24.
Okay.
The last paragraph, it was mentioned the history of Apple Watch is as long as the history of the company, something like that.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. Does that mean that Apple has just been working on various pieces that become part of the Apple Watch? Or is it that there's a long pipeline of products waiting to be launched, which would help you with this continual production of new products idea?
It gives me the perception that they probably could not entirely produce the product based on the original idea or concept, but they always had this waiting list so that you can, like, if you really need something, you will put more efforts to try to produce it. This
Where is
also
the
applies.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Is it 21?
24.
24? Oh, sorry. Isn't it where the idea of a waiting list? I guess I'm just trying to understand what you mean by it. If by waiting list, do you mean that there are products waiting to be launched so that Apple always has a new product to launch? Or
No. What I was trying to mention is something hasn't ready to launch, but had the potential to be launched. There's a list of ideas of this kind of not yet ready launch ideas.
okay, in that case, I've misinterpreted what you're saying. Can you rewrite what I just highlighted so that it's accurate?
Okay. The reason I mentioned this is also related to, if you remember, they try to cut the age of the Apple Watch. That's not an idea emerging from the Apple Watch. They had that kind of idea at the very beginning, but they can apply the idea into this new product.
Okay, so this maybe is a more accurate way of saying it. Yep. Okay. Okay, great. I think we should sort of just very quickly fill in this stuff, this last column. So how does, because now we're really, this is like a long session now. So this highly intimate, empowered, well-resourced design team, which has worked together for many years, how does this strategic action take advantage of the firm's external and internal constraints and resources? I mean, to me, the obvious thing is design talent is rare. So if you have it, you use it, right? And where is design talent?
Yeah, we have that as an external constraint is there aren't very many world-class designers. And then an internal opportunity is Apple has lots of world-class designers.
Yeah. Okay. I'll fill in this one. You guys just keep talking about the rest of it so that we can fast-ish.
How does the So integrating hardware design and production engineering, and also basically letting designers have latitude over the entire process from prototyping to production. How does that take advantage of the firm's external constraints and opportunities? I guess it takes advantage of one external opportunity we identified at the beginning, which was it brings a sense of like careful design into all of Apple's products in a way that their competitors don't have to the same extent. So maybe I'll put that.
Yeah. It's familiar and familial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
Nice.
it also
That can be the album name of your band, Belinda. First album cover.
A 14-minute first.
Do you think this also requires a more talented person to do so? Because I mean, for some designer, they cannot handle the responsibility for the software, for instance. So they, in this case, they also take advantage of their talented staff.
Mhm.
I think careful page 8 across the entire production process, which is page 12. Already seen in the marketplace is page 1.
I mean, I think but by the way, just as we're filling this out, one thing that occurs to me as I read through this list is that Apple is an interesting example of how a relatively small number of actions can help, because of the way they're all interconnected, the company achieve a set of goals that themselves are also interconnected, but are different. So it's not like they're doing lots and lots of different things. The things that we're listing and the actions adopted to pursue goals are actually, as we've been talking about, quite closely connected to each other. They're dimensions of things rather than entirely separate actions, right? So it doesn't look exactly like the Porterian view of strategy as lots of distinctive actions that are taken as a network of configured things to do. This is more sort of like a highly integrated strategy, if you will, if you want to take it that way.
Yeah.
Cool.
People as a company that shoots its work as well.
Good collaborative.
This is just getting designers to join the company. That one.
Yeah.
Limitless financial resources.
Inexhaustible.
Inexhaustible. I think the key with the sort of not just the money but the perks is because somewhere in there I think they say that you can't get people this smart to work this hard just for money. You have to give them a sense of, I don't know, empowerment and all this other stuff as well. So I'll put that in.
Yeah.
Keep on going.
Okay. So, question to everyone. So, do we need to write a separate thing for how does the strategic action take advantage of the firm's external and internal constraints and opportunities for the fact that they have an important design team for every goal? Because I think it's a thing again, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna paste this down there, and then maybe we might want to add little asides to it depending on the goal.
It's it is, I guess, important to say that. So what I wrote in this first thing, which I've highlighted, it doesn't exactly yet speak precisely to this goal, right? So one question to ask is, how does this intimate, empowered, well-resourced design team help the company produce within the parameters of pricing accessibility? We haven't quite been
something
able to
about-
articulate that yet.
No, absolutely. There's something about deliberate strategic pricing that we haven't.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
High for technology,
that's a
disruptively
big
low for
thing.
jewelry, which I think is an inherent part of the design process. And that's interesting as well, that they've brought every element, including market access, into the design process.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not handed over to the endless resources of the marketing team.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if I can say again what Belinda just said, what this does is it allows Apple to internalize a lot of the market research and, well, not market research. It's able to internalize something, and we have to say what that thing is into the design team's ambit, which allows to
Not just appropriate to price point, they essentially redefined the price point.
Yeah.
Okay. Someone fix what I just wrote because I think it should be fixed.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like there's some like dark matter around which all of the goals that we've identified are orbiting, which has got it's to do with the fact that I think they want to make something that a product which is as high quality as possible for the uses they've identified, which is also as it's cheap enough so that most people it's expensive for people to buy it, but it's so good that people want to buy it. But again, like that doesn't capture the newness as well, the continual, strangely familiar.
I mean, they redefined consumption, which is pretty big.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, don't just talk about it, actually change some text.
Allows Apple to internalize market research and understanding into the design team's ambit. What does ambit mean?
Its scope of responsibilities and abilities.
How is it different from remit?
Remit, I think, is just your scope of responsibilities, like what you have been allowed to do.
Ah, interesting.
Well, I mean, who knows? Maybe I'm using words imprecisely.
Maybe. Which allows Apple product to design to be appropriate to price point, also to be highly functional. Yeah, I think this is actually pretty good.
It remind me the reduced transaction cost, though it's not relevant.
One thing we have really only talked about obliquely in relation to the fact that Apple products are relatively accessible is that they need limitless financial resources to do all of like this, cutting edge materials prototyping, but then they end up bringing the cost of manufacture and the cost of sale for some of these high quality materials down loads. I imagine Apple have done wonders for the cost of manufacture of sapphire glass since the Apple Watch has come out.
Absolutely, by getting to scale, basically, right?
Yeah, exactly. Use of extremely high quality, take advantage of financial resources.
I think this term that you used, Tom, dark matter, is very appropriate because when you start to really kind of unpack why the design team is so important based on the evidence in this article, you start to realize that different aspects of why the design team works in the way it does help Apple achieve these goals in different ways, right? Which is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it is cool.
Yeah.
It's also
Potentially
it's
confusing.
also yeah, it's also crazy to think about if you remove these 19 people from the company, what would happen? Like, that's the thing that they allude to this when they say, you know, when I think if Johnny Ive were to leave the company, it says in the article, maybe the Apple share price would depreciate by a few percent, and that would be a loss of billions of dollars of market value.
Where is that?
It's right at the beginning, I think.
Yeah.
Let me find that.
Yeah, find that because I think we should put that in.
See if my search works. Nope, my search isn't working. I can't find the word billion once.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Let me see if I can find it. Billion.
It's probably it.
Yes, here we go. It is on page 1. A 10% drop in Apple's value represents $71 billion. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, and I know that when Johnny Ive did leave, the Apple shares did depreciate by, I don't think it was as much as 10%, but it was like $30 billion of marketplace value was destroyed by him signing. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Language.
What constraints and opportunities does making design a part of every conversation take advantage of?
I think what it mostly is, and this is just my opinion, it's that in most other companies, it's this vertical thing, right? So it like stuff gets made, it goes through a design process, then moves on to production and sales and everything. Whereas at Apple, it's through everything. It actually speaks a lot to the dark matter idea that we've been kicking around. It's that design is part of, and also everything else is part of design. It's highly integrated in a way that I think is genuinely quite rare. And I cannot think of any other large company that really does it in this way. So that's what I think. I don't know what you all think.
No, I agree. I think I agree as an observation. I think that you're right. I'm trying to think how to phrase it from what is this taking advantage of, or what constraints is it releasing?
I think the opportunity that it's addressing in the environment is that competitors treat design as a vertical thing, which is why they make things that are new, not necessarily good. They don't have this idea of, I mean, so many of the aspects of how Apple makes what it makes, like the tremendous fit and finish, because their designers are part of everything all the way through to production engineering. That's a factor in here too, right? So I guess competitors treat design as a stage of production, and I'll fill this up.
Is your statement equal to, or I mean, the design department has a very essential role or function in the company, like every other departments will surround the design department? Is that equal to your statement?
Yeah.
Or
go ahead.
Alternatively, all the departments will integrate together without variation of importances of the department.
I think my interpretation anyway, which may be incorrect, is that it's less about the integration is how the thing happens, and it's not the thing that is important in itself, right? The fact that you could imagine it's possible that you don't have to integrate design with everything the way Apple has done it, for production engineers to understand how to make things more beautiful, or for designers to understand how to make production more precise and more sort of like extreme. You could imagine a situation where it's possible to do that without integration. All I'm saying is most companies don't integrate, and therefore people who design are not connected to material and production process.
Okay.
Competitors, designers are therefore ignorant. I'm just using words from inside the article now of what a material can and cannot do, which is the origin of bad industrial design. So the fact that at Apple, design is part of all of it, everything from concept to production engineering to marketing to sales, it does something, right? And the thing it does is it makes every part of what Apple does something which can be designed, and therefore something which feels cohesive. And not just feels cohesive, in some very specific examples which were shown inside this article, it allows the designers at Apple to do things which other designers simply cannot do. Like designers at Apple, because they work with the actual production machinery when prototyping, they can prototype actual products, and they can understand exactly how far to push the production machine. That's what I'm saying. The fact that it's integrated or not integrated, to me, is like, it is true that at Apple, design is integrated with everything else, but that's not the point. The point is, because it's integrated with everything else, at Apple, the designers are able to do things which designers at other companies cannot do, because they approach industrial design differently. It make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So what else do we need to say? We need to add in just these last two bits. Okay.
Obviously, it impressed me that how easily they can like hire these previous CEOs from those big companies.
Yeah.
As long as they want.
Yes.
Yes. So that certainly takes advantage of internal opportunities, personal relationships as much as anything.
Interesting. So we didn't bring that up as something that was in the internal. Actually, does it say that? Where does it say that they were able to hire these people because of internal connections?
It talks about his certainly wider network. I'll go and see if the quote is
Yeah.
on I mean, the recurring theme throughout the article, of course, is his relationship with and desire to work within the luxury market, the network that he builds around himself with that in mind.
Yeah. Who's the designer that he was working on? He also does Qantas's, all of Qantas's design. Mark Newson, that's right. So I think it's up there.
I'll take all Qantas questions. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Mark Newsom.
So
he's been working in that world for a long time. So I think the two points meet. One, he brings the network with him, but also he had the internal influence to be able to persuade the board to say, okay, let's do this.
Yeah. So this is interesting because we wrote about neither of these in the previous page. So once I've written this, I'm going to go put it back in. External contacts in luxury design. That's on page 4.
Yeah.
And of course,
and also
written in the article, it's presented somewhat as a hostage situation / very firm negotiation. You need me.
Yes.
This is what I need to say.
Yeah. Where do you find that, Belinda, actually?
So he talks about, again, my page numbers aren't.
Yeah. Give me a quote and I'll search for it in my document.
Okay, so in section 4, Bob Mansfield is talking about it. So I've had to make a case to Apple. Mansfield recalled a lot of resistance. They didn't want to create a divide between wealthy and less wealthy customers.
Yeah.
But I've won the argument. And in 2013, those people
Hmm.
were appointed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is
Great.
the other recurrent theme of the article being Apple wants to build products for everybody.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So I'm going to put this up top. Meanwhile, feel free to this one, creating a long pipeline of ideas and technologies created for previous products. What does that take advantage of or help deal with the constraint posed by in the environment?
I think it's not possible without Apple having all the money that it has to enable them to fail or to make lots of failed prototypes.
Yeah.
So that's one piece, and then I guess also it's partially releasing the constraint, the internal constraint of the pressure to continually release new products.
Yeah.
What else? Just scrolling back up. Yeah, so those are the main ones.
Are there other
And
examples of?
capacity to deliver.
Sorry, go ahead, Belinda.
Oh, just capacity to deliver at pace, as they say. Delivering something is as important as it being excellent, but it will be excellent because they've been working on it for so long in the background.
Yeah.
So not just filling a market gap, they're able to meet a market gap or identify it.
Yeah.